was a little after sunrise. The St. Mary's River was dead calm. Freelance was patiently waiting with our buddy boat, the Annie B. Stone, to look up to Lake Superior, this time using one of the big American locks at Sault Ste. Marie. Actually, Vicki and I prefer using the smaller Canadian lock, but that one is only open for business mid-morning, and we had far to go this day, so the big MacArthur lock would have to do. The MacArthur lock was built in 1943. It's the smallest of the American Soo locks, with a length of 800 feet and a width of 80 feet. When you call into the lockmaster, you should always ask for 2 lines to hold you against the wall. You just grab onto them, hold on, and gradually haul them in while you gently rise to 23 feet in the lock. Locking through is a very simple process. It's something that we have not done more than a few times. It just takes time. By the way, one helpful hint is to use your boat hooks to push your boat off the lock's wall. Lock walls can sometimes be dirty and slimy, and the muck may transfer to your fenders. So using boat hooks is pressing the easy button. The turbulence in the lock is minimal. It's really nothing to worry about as long as you hold on to the 2 lines, of course. I should mention that there's not any charge to use either lock system at Sault Ste. Marie, and you can pass through them without any border or customs clearances, whether you're cruising along the Canadian or American shores. It's a great convenience. I suppose I should once again mention that locking through is usually done with a large audience. The Soo locks are a popular tourist destination, so please smile widely to give the spectators the impression that sailing is wonderful. However, this was way too early in the morning for any tourist to be in a large covered grandstand that overlooks the action in the MacArthur lock. The upper lock gate swung open. One of the friendly attendants came to collect the 2 lines, and we quickly tossed them back over to him.
Thank you very much.
I then put Freelance's gear in forward, and we followed the Annie B. Stone out into the upper part of the St. Mary's River. As is required, our engine had been left running the entire time we were in the lock. It's probably a policy precaution to ensure that you won't slow down the lock operations if you should be so unlucky to have major problems restarting your engine. We, unfortunately, know from experience that it can happen. The Annie B. Stone was underway ahead of us. We knew we would eventually catch up and pass them because Freelance is slightly faster on the power. It really didn't matter. We were parting ways in Whitefish Bay. Vicki and I were headed west to the charming town of Grand Marais on Lake Superior's Shipwreck Coast, while the Annie B. was turning north towards the wilderness anchorages along the beautiful Canadian East Shore. Their goal was to eventually attend the famous folk festival at Red Rock. It took nearly an hour for us to lock up. It's what we expected. We were now in for a long sailing day that would basically go from sunrise to sunset, assuming we could maintain a cruising speed of 6 knots. I sure hope so. The first leg of our trip was, of course, the upper part of the busy St. Mary's River, where we would still be in close quarters with the freighter traffic. It didn't take long before we saw one of the largest of the Lakers coming down against us.
This is the Edgar Spear.
The Spear is another of the 1,000-foot freighters that carry bulk cargo on the Great Lakes. It's impressive, especially up close. It's a twin-screw self-unloading ship which was launched back in 1980. It can move at 18 knots, but has to go slow in the St. Mary's. The river remained calm, but the weather for this day was forecast to be favorable for sailing. They called for south winds at a strength of 10 to 20 knots. If it proved true, that would indeed create a fine sailing day for Freelance. The Great Lakes weather forecasting is usually quite accurate. This service is necessary for the commercial shipping. The lake's weather can be volatile. Weather fronts and cells may come racing out of the western plains and slam into the Great Lakes with great force. Sometimes it creates sea conditions that are somewhat similar to parts of the North Sea and the Baltic. So it's always a high priority to keep a close eye on the weather and forecasts when you're boating on the Great Lakes. We pass Point Iroquois. It's where back in 1662 the Anishinaabe decidedly stopped the Iroquois expansion into the Lake Superior region, and where Freelance now entered the wide Whitefish Bay. After spending time in the river, the bay feels absolutely huge, and it is. It's about 30 miles long and about 15 to 34 miles wide. At the Gross Cap, the light breeze became more pronounced. As had been forecast, it was southerly, and for now, it was a following wind. Unfortunately, the wind was too light for us to use our sails. Our instrument showed a true wind speed of only 10 knots and an apparent wind barely of 3 knots. That would not give us a minimum cruising speed of 6 knots that we needed to make Grand Marais before sunset. We could only hope the wind strength would improve by the time we would round Whitefish Point and go west along the infamous Shipwreck Coast. Of course, we still saw freighters in Whitefish Bay. This one was the Leatha, another self-discharging bulk carrier. She is 828 feet long. Later, the downbound freighter John Bolland went past us. That Laker is 680 feet long. At Whitefish Point, Freelance turned west along Lake Superior's low and sandy Shipwreck Coast. To me, this section from Whitefish Point to Grand Marais reminds me of the west coast of Jutland, which also has a well-earned reputation as dangerous. The Shipwreck Coast has more than 200 shipwrecks, but none of them happened in recent decades. Some blame these old tragedies on the shallow water extending far out from the shore, high winds, high waves, fog and ice. It's also the true lee shore of the lake, and a coast with few obvious landmarks. Vicki and I have passed this section many times and never had any problems. You just have to watch the weather. Speaking of the weather, we now had our main and staysail set and were comfortably going along on the reach. It was a comfortable ride. The wind speed was now up to 15 knots and building. That was consistent with the forecast. Unfortunately, the wind direction gradually shifted from the south to the southwest, making our progress a beat to weather. And that was not good news. We could ill afford to tack. That would seriously delay our arrival at Grand Marais until well after sunset, and I don't particularly like entering a port after sunset. At 3 o'clock, Freelance's staysail was coming down, and we would, regrettably, again be reduced to motor sailing upwind with the main as a riding sail. The wind had shifted just those critical 5 degrees further forward, and it was now blowing at 20 knots. It certainly wasn't the sail we had expected to enjoy when we had reviewed the weather forecast early in the morning. It got rougher. We were bashing into the chop. Together the southwesterly fresh breeze and the east-flowing current were, of course, reducing our speed over ground, but it still looked like we should reach our desired destination by sunset. And just maybe the waves and winds would go down some by the time we got there, when we would be more on the lee of the land. Five hours later, nearly at 8 o'clock and at sunset, the seas had indeed subsided. Vicki gently turned Freelance in towards the two long breakwaters at Grand Marais. Grand Marais is an all-weather harbor with a deep and easy entry. It used to be open to the east because its old eastern barrier breakwater had severely deteriorated. It more or less washed away decades ago, allowing for the sand to slowly fill in the eastern part of the natural harbor. In 2012, a new eastern breakwater was built by the Army Corps of Engineers, restoring Grand Marais as the only viable all-weather harbor of refuge along the 80-mile Shipwreck Coast. The construction was a critical infrastructure project that was partly funded by the Great Lakes Foundation. The Great Lakes Foundation is a parallel organization to the Great Lakes Cruising Club. The small marina at Grand Marais is a long wharf with a fuel dock and several broadside tie-ups. They were all taken, so instead we anchored out in a large and calm basin for the night.
When there was a dock vacancy in the morning, Nielsen and I moved Freelance to the wharf, where we stayed for the next 2 nights. From the marina, which is called Burt Township Marina, it's just a short walk up the small hill to Grand Marais Business District. We went up there to have lunch at the local brew pub. After a nice tavern-type meal, we walked further into the town. We know it well, having been there several times before. It's a friendly and pleasant place to visit. And we wanted to pick up a few groceries from the Superior Shores Market. The store carries basic necessities as well as produce, meat, beer, and liquor. Its selection isn't huge, but they had what we needed. The swimming beach in the bay is usually very busy when the weather is warm. It's located right across from the marina. However, there's another and much larger sand beach on the lakeside directly north of the harbor. That popular beach has a stunning view of the towering Osable Dunes, which rise 300 feet from Lake Superior. Years ago, we climbed one of the chutes to the top with our kids. It's a special memory for us. We didn't do any dune climbing this time, mainly just relaxing on Freelance in the calm and peaceful harbor. It's a great place to get off the lake for a while, a place where the weather really can't touch you.
It was foggy when we got up in the morning. The fog had been forecast. I hate fog, but as we used to say in the Danish Air Force, det er bare ærgerligt. Our radar reflector was hoisted. We were going. Vicki smoothly steered us away from the wharf, past the mooring field and the anchorage, and out towards the breakwaters. It had been a nice and relaxing layover in the small harbor town. We always enjoy visiting Grand Marais. By the way, there are 2 harbor towns named Grand Marais and Lake Superior. We like them both. This one is in Michigan. The other is on the Minnesota North Shore. They are worth visiting. The forecast was for patchy fog. It didn't seem too bad this time. The reason I dislike fog is that you have to be super vigilant. You might never know what might be moving around out there in the mist, even if you have radar. Some targets, kayaks and small fishing boats for instance, may have poor returns. It doesn't help that some fiberglass boats are pretty much stealth targets. I know from experience that it is especially difficult to see sailboats coming right at you on the radar. You may of course still pick them up with AIS if they are so equipped, but many recreational boats don't have AIS.
Jubilee, this is Freelance and 6-8, over.
Jubilee and 6-8, over.
Yeah, we're a little bit ahead of you here. We're running, the fog is pretty patchy. It comes and goes. Sometimes we have half a mile, sometimes it closes in a little bit, but generally speaking, it's pretty good, over.
Well, it's not pretty good here yet. We do not have a half mile, over.
Well, as I said, it's patchy. It's sometimes it closes in, sometimes it opens up. I got kayak about a little over half a mile in front of me, and sometimes we can see him, but we are losing him because he's moving much faster than we are. Over.
Yeah. Kayak is going about 8-3, so he is moving ahead of you, over.
Yeah, we're going only about 6, barely 6, just to keep it down here in the fog, over.
Yeah, we're even doing like, we're doing 6 also to keep it down so that we can see what's going on. But, hopefully a little bit over.
Yeah, the weather forecast was for patchy fog through the day, so I expect that we're going to have it on and off, but I don't think, I don't see anything moving on the radar, or.
Yeah, and we don't see you on our radar either, but I don't know how far ahead you might be of us, over.
Well, I might be about 3-4 miles ahead of you if you recently got out of the harbor, but we do have our radar reflector off, over.
I should say that I'm never afraid of losing my way in fog. Even in the old times of Dead Reckoning, running contour lines and Lorraine Sea, I always reach my destination. Regardless, today's GPS is so much more convenient to use than the old navigational methods and has good accuracy. It requires so much less manual work. Our radar was working well. Freelance was now off the Osable Point, with our friends in Jubilee slowly gaining on us. In one of the open patches, we could somewhat make out the Osable light at the point. The lighthouse really is a pretty one when you see it in clear weather. From the Osable Point, the Shipwreck Coast bends southwest along the magnificent Pictured Rocks National Lakeshore down to Munising. We were not going that way this time, although it was tempting. The National Lakeshore is very special, and the town of Munising charming. Instead, we kept heading west, intending to pass north of Grand Island and on to the port city of Marquette. It was about 8 o'clock when our friends Judy and Bill in Jubilee went past us. Hal, our autopilot, held us on our course, while the visibility seemed to be improving. We were hoping the fog would soon burn off, but it was taking its time. At 10:30, after about 4.5 hours in the fog, it was gone. In the lingering haze, we could see Grand Island off in the distance and could now relax. There was cell service, so Vicki caught up on her texts and emails. There wasn't much else to do. We were locked in on our GPS route. At 12:30, the big return blip on our radar was a James Overstar, another big lager coming loaded out of the Presque Isle ore dock at Marquette. The big ship was over the horizon. We could not see it. 40 minutes later, Freelance was off Laughing Trout Point. There were still about 3 more hours to go before we would be at Marquette's Cinder Pond Marina. There are 2 marinas at Marquette. Cinder Pond is downtown, We prefer it because it's conveniently located to restaurants, shops, activities, and museums. The other is Presque Isle Marina. It's by a beautiful nature park, which was designed by Olmsted, who also designed New York City's Central Park and the U.S. Capitol grounds. It's a great place to stay if you're cruising with kids. Our friends Judy and Bill and Jubilee would also stay at Cinder Pond. We were looking forward to meeting up with them again and plan on going out together for a meal at one of our favorite restaurants in the city. There are a lot of good places to pick from. For now, Vicki and I would just have to patiently click off the final miles of our 10-hour, 60-mile journey. Reading books is a good way to pass the time when there's little else to do, except of course to keep a lookout for any traffic. There wasn't any traffic moving out there, and the waters were very calm. When you come in from the east and first see Marquette off in the distance, you may not realize how far to the south the entrance of the harbor really is located. It doesn't help that the picturesque red lighthouse is not at the harbor entrance, but at a rocky point a ways to the north. Obviously, locating the harbor entrance wasn't a problem for us. We have been here many times before, so we know it well. Besides, our repeat waypoint was set off the end of the long breakwater. Electronic navigation is a great help. Marquette's harbor basin is very large. It was scaled for the busy commercial shipping that once was present here. So, when you're going along on the inside of the long breakwater, it'll still take you some time to reach the marina and the long wharf at the end of the basin. I should mention that the city of Marquette is another of our favorite Lake Superior ports. Its waterfront and downtown have quite a fun, friendly, and lively vibe, likely because the city is a thriving college town. The Northern Michigan University, with its about 7,000 students, is located within the city. Also, Marquette is the largest city in Michigan's Upper Peninsula. It was originally formed to ship ore from a nearby iron range. A massive concrete and steel ore dock still dominates the western side of the harbor basin. It's a prominent landmark, but it's no longer in use. Instead, the Lakers are loaded at the taconite dock at the Presque Isle Marina on the city's north side. The Cinder Pond Marina is located in the middle of the harbor's north shore between the mooring field and a waterfront park. The facilities are modern and clean, and the staff super helpful and friendly. There's also a 35-ton travel lift. Most of the marina slips are for smaller boats, but it has a few suitable slips for larger cruising boats. If those are taken, or your boat is too large, it is possible to tie up alongside the long outside wharf, which is also managed by the marina. We had dock reservations for inside the marina, and we're happy to once again to be back at the city of Marquette.